Thank you, Representative Slotkin. Madam Speaker, when people sometimes ask me to name an unusual fun fact about myself, something that no one would quite believe would be true, I sometimes say that at a younger point in my life, I had a chance to write and negotiate a 4-act parody performance of West Side Story with the Russian government. And I owe that experience to Madam Secretary, to Madeleine Albright. I was a young speechwriter at the State Department when she became Secretary of State. And I was so thrilled to have that opportunity because here I was, an immigrant from Poland when it was a communist country. Our new Secretary of State, an immigrant from Czechoslovakia, leaving that country under duress with her family when it became a communist country. I felt a kinship with this extraordinary American, a sense that we saw the world in similar terms. I saw her in every part of the world stand up for our country, for our values, for our interest. I saw her face down dictators and comfort their victims. And I saw her sense of fun. In 1997, we were on our way to a meeting of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, in Malaysia, and we learned a couple of days in advance that there was a tradition that every delegation would put on a skit at the end of this diplomatic meeting, something very, very unusual. And we heard furthermore that the United States had developed a reputation for really sucking at the skit. And that was not acceptable to Madeleine Albright. She was going to go and stand up for democracy in Burma and Cambodia and have a standoff with the Chinese over the South China Sea, but we were also going to win the skit. And so she assigned me to write a brand new version of Don't Cry for Me, Argentina from Evita, which became Don't Cry for Me, ASEANese. And we all got up there and performed it, not really knowing what the reaction would be, and it was reviewed in Playbook on Broadway. It was such a surprising hit. And we learned something really interesting, that in diplomacy, you can actually say anything, no matter how sensitive, no matter how potentially offensive to your diplomatic partners around the world, if you make it rhyme and you put it in a song. And so the next year, we got even more ambitious, and we went to the Russians and said, would you like to do West Side Story with us? And they said yes. And so my job, over the most stressful week of my life, counting my last 2 elections, was to negotiate into long hours of the night with Russian diplomats the jokes that we would make in this 4-act production of West Side Story. And we didn't think that they would do it until the last minute. The night before the performance at midnight, the foreign minister of Russia, Yevgeny Primakov, who had been the head of their KGB, stumbled in with his aides into Secretary Albright's suite, completely drunk, and said, we're ready to rehearse. And we knew that we had it. Now, those were obviously simpler days, better days, when we could fight with the Russians on all kinds of issues, but still find some fellowship and some friendship and some opportunity to laugh together. Times have changed. And when I look at what is happening right now to the brave people of Ukraine and the evil that Russia has unleashed upon them, and so many other terrible things that the government of Vladimir Putin has done in recent years, I thank goodness for what Secretary of State Madeleine Albright did in the 1990s, particularly her role in leading the expansion, the first expansion of the NATO alliance. She understood, she saw before most people that it would be unjust to stay allied with Europe's old democracies, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, forever, but Europe's new democracies never, simply because they had once, against their will, been subjugated by the Soviet Union. She also saw it would be unwise, in fact reckless, to to allow these Eastern European democracies to stay in a gray zone of insecurity, to signal to Russia that it could in effect do what it wanted in this zone, that America would not defend these countries. She said then of NATO expansion that it was basically about expanding the part of Europe where wars do not happen, that by making clear that we, the United States, will fight, if necessary, to defend our allies there, we would make the necessity of doing so actually far, far less likely. And she was right. Not a single member of NATO, old or new, has ever been attacked on European soil to this day. The only countries Russia has attacked are countries that do not have NATO's defense guarantee. I think one reason she saw these things is because as an immigrant to America, as an immigrant from tyranny, she saw America from the inside but also from the outside. She saw what America means, what the idea of America means to a human rights defender in Burma, to a dissident in China, to a refugee from violence in Kosovo or Bosnia. She comforted so many of those people and convinced them that America was on their side. She believed America is a special country, indeed an indispensable country. She understood that our influence in the world comes not just from the example of our power, but from the power of our example at home. And in her last years, when I would see her, she would often tell me that one of her greatest regrets was she never had a chance to run for office. She was jealous of those of us who'd worked with her over the years who decided to run for Congress, because she understood that we can't do anything for others if we are not safe and strong at home in our own great American democracy. Years ago, when I worked for her, she gave a commencement address, and I'll just close with these words that she spoke. She said, "There's no certain roadmap to success, either for individuals or for generations. Ultimately, it is a matter of judgment, a question of choice. In making that choice, let us remember that there is not a page of American history of which we are proud that was authored by a chronic complainer or a prophet of despair. We are doers. We have a responsibility, as others have had in their times, not to be prisoners of history, but to shape history. A responsibility to fill the role of pathfinder and to build with others a global network of purpose and will and law that will protect our citizens, defend our interests, preserve our values, and bequeath to future generations a legacy as proud as the one that she was honoring that day. To that mission," she said, "I pledge my own best efforts and summon yours." We pledge our best efforts to that mission here today, and we summon those of everybody who is watching this evening. Thank you. I yield back.